Welcome to Bedtime Sports Stories, the channel where legendary moments in sports are retold in a calm and soothing way to help you relax and fall asleep. If you enjoy these stories, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring bedtime sports stories, and tell us in the comments what time of the night are you listening to this story. Now, let's dive into tonight's story about the Tom Brady Dynasty, a bedtime story for champions, the draft day dreamer. The sleepy Brady meme and how close he was to obscurity. There's a photograph that has become legendary in the annals of sports history. It shows a young man, lanky and unimpressive in physical stature, slouched in a chair at the 2000 NFL Combine. His face bears an expression somewhere between exhaustion and resignation. This is Tom Brady, just hours before the most important job interview of his life, and he looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. The internet would later dub this the Sleepy Brady meme, but the truth behind that weary expression is far more profound than simple fatigue. Tom Brady was never supposed to be great. Standing at 6 feet 4 inches tall but weighing barely over 200 pounds, he possessed none of the physical attributes that NFL scouts drool over. His 40-yard dash time at the Combine clocked in at a glacial 5.28 seconds, making him slower than most linemen. His vertical jump measured a pitiful 24.5 inches. When he stripped down for his body composition analysis, the photos revealed a soft, almost doughy physique that looked nothing like the chiseled athletes surrounding him. One scout's report from that day brutally assessed him as having poor build and skinny, with narrow frame and thin. Another noted his lack of great physical stature and strength, and questioned whether he had the mobility and ability to avoid the rush. But perhaps the most damning aspect of Brady's draft profile wasn't his physical limitations. It was his college career at the University of Michigan. Despite flashes of brilliance, Brady spent much of his time competing for the starting position, even losing playing time to highly touted recruit Drew Henson. Head coach Lloyd Carr employed a controversial two-quarterback system during Brady's senior year, a decision that left the young quarterback frustrated and doubting his own abilities. While he eventually won the starting job outright and led Michigan to an Orange Bowl victory, the damage to his draft stock was done. Scouts saw a quarterback who couldn't definitively beat out the competition even at the college level. As draft day approached in April 2000, Brady waited and waited. The first round came and went with no call. Then the second round, the third, the fourth, the fifth. With each passing selection, Brady sat in his parents' home in San Mateo, California, watching his dreams slip away. 6 other quarterbacks were selected before him: Chad Pennington, Giovanni Camazzi, Chris Redman, T. Martin, Mark Bulger, and Spurgeon Wynn. Some of these names have faded into complete obscurity. Spurgeon Wynn, selected by the Cleveland Browns in the 6th round, would throw just 17 passes in his entire NFL career. Finally, with the 199th pick in the 6th round, the New England Patriots called Brady's name. He was the 7th quarterback selected and the 199th player overall out of 254 picks. There were only 7 players selected after him. Brady was, statistically speaking, approximately 1 selection away from going undrafted entirely. Had the draft been just slightly shorter, had teams been slightly less interested in late-round lottery tickets, Tom Brady might never have played a single down in the NFL. The young man who walked into the New England Patriots facility in the summer of 2000 was acutely aware of his precarious position. He was buried on the depth chart behind Drew Bledsoe, a franchise quarterback who had just signed a then-record 10-year, $103 million contract. Bledsoe was the face of the franchise, a former number 1 overall pick who had already led the Patriots to a Super Bowl appearance. Behind Bledsoe were veteran backups John Freese and Michael Bishop. Brady was 4th string, the practice squad player who might get cut before the season even began. But something burned inside Brady that his physical measurements couldn't capture. Years later, he would reveal that he kept a list of all the players selected before him taped to his wall. He memorized their names. He studied their careers. Every single one of them represented a team that didn't believe in him, a scout who dismissed him, a coach who thought someone else was better. This rejection became fuel, transforming his perceived weakness into an almost pathological drive to prove everyone wrong. During his rookie season, Brady barely saw the field. He appeared in just one game, attempting 3 passes. He spent his time studying film obsessively, arriving early and staying late, absorbing everything he could about Bill Belichick's complex system. While other young players partied or relaxed during their downtime, Brady lived at the facility. He befriended offensive coordinator Charlie Weiss and quarterbacks coach Dick Rebine, picking their brains about coverages, progressions, and the mental chess game of professional football. The Patriots finished that 2000 season with a disappointing 5-11 record, their worst since Bill Belichick took over as head coach. Drew Bledsoe, despite his enormous contract, struggled with injuries and inconsistency. The team was in transition, searching for an identity, and Brady, the forgotten 6th-round pick, continued to wait, continued to work, continued to prepare for an opportunity he had no guarantee would ever come. Nobody could have predicted what would happen next. Not the scouts who dismissed him, not the teams that passed on him, not even Brady himself could have imagined the dynasty he was about to build. But in that combination of crushing rejection and unwavering determination, the foundation was laid for the greatest career in football history. The sleepy kid from the combine was about to wake up and shock the world. The unlikely alliance with Bill Belichick and the Patriot Way blueprint. If Tom Brady was an unlikely hero, his partnership with Bill Belichick was an even more improbable alliance. By the time the 2001 season began, Belichick was far from the legendary figure he would become. His previous head coaching stint with the Cleveland Browns had been tumultuous, ending with a 47-50 record and a reputation as a cold, analytical tactician who struggled with the human elements of leadership. When he took over the Patriots in 2000, many in the media questioned whether he had the personality to succeed as a head coach in the modern NFL. Belichick's approach to football was revolutionary, but initially unpopular. He valued specific skill sets over star power, frequently trading away popular veterans if he felt they no longer fit his system or were demanding too much money. He implemented a rigid structure with an almost military emphasis on discipline, preparation, and doing your job. Players were expected to be versatile, egoless, and completely committed to team success over individual statistics. This philosophy, which would later be lionized as the Patriot Way, was initially met with skepticism. Critics argued that his system was too rigid, that it would stifle creativity and alienate talented players. The second game of the 2001 season would change everything. Facing the New York Jets at Foxborough Stadium, the Patriots were struggling. Drew Bledsoe, attempting to pick up a few extra yards on a scramble, was hit violently by Jets linebacker Mo Lewis. The collision was devastating. Bledsoe suffered a sheared blood vessel in his chest, an injury that would later prove life-threatening when internal bleeding nearly killed him. As Bledsoe was helped off the field, Belichick faced a crucial decision. He could turn to veteran backup Damon Huard, a safer choice with more experience. Or he could hand the keys to the franchise to a second-year quarterback who had thrown exactly 3 passes in his entire NFL career. Belichick chose Brady. It was a decision born of necessity, but it was also a reflection of what the coach had observed over the previous year. While Brady lacked physical tools, he possessed something Belichick valued even more: an obsessive attention to detail and an ability to process complex information quickly. Brady spent countless hours studying film, not just of opposing defenses, but of his own mechanics, his decision-making, his every movement on the field. He asked questions constantly, challenged coaches respectfully, and demonstrated a work ethic that impressed even Belichick's notoriously demanding staff. The early results were mixed. Brady's first start against the Indianapolis Colts resulted in a narrow victory despite modest statistics. Over the following weeks, he showed flashes of competence, but nothing that suggested greatness. He was a game manager, a caretaker quarterback who didn't lose games but didn't necessarily win them either. The Patriots started winning not because of spectacular plays from their young quarterback, but because Belichick's defense was playing at an elite level and Brady was avoiding costly mistakes. But something interesting was developing in the chemistry between coach and quarterback. Belichick recognized in Brady a perfect vessel for his football philosophy. Brady had no ego about throwing 3-yard passes if that's what the defense gave him. He understood that his job wasn't to put up gaudy statistics, but to execute the game plan and put the team in position to win. This selflessness and football intelligence aligned perfectly with Belichick's team-first mentality. For his part, Brady thrived under Belichick's demanding tutelage. Where some players wilted under the coach's harsh criticism and impossible standards, Brady absorbed every critique and used it to improve. When Belichick designed a game plan, Brady executed it with machine-like precision. When the defense struggled, Brady kept the offense on the field with methodical, time-consuming drives. When the team needed a crucial third-down conversion, Brady delivered with a short, perfectly placed pass that moved the chains. As the season progressed, the Patriots kept winning. They defeated the Colts and Peyton Manning. They toppled the Dolphins in Miami. They beat the Jets in the rematch. By the time Bledsoe was healthy enough to return, the Patriots had built an 11-3 record, and Brady had firmly established himself as the starter. The decision to stick with the young quarterback over the highly paid veteran would have been controversial at many organizations, but Belichick never wavered. Brady had earned the job through performance, and in Belichick's meritocracy, that was all that mattered. The Patriot way was crystallizing into something tangible. It valued preparation over talent, execution over improvisation, team success over individual glory. Players bought in because the approach was working. Brady embodied these principles so completely that he became the walking, talking manifestation of Belichick's football philosophy. The coach provided the system and the defensive foundation. The quarterback provided the steady, error-free execution. Together, they formed a partnership that would redefine excellence in professional sports. Critics would later argue about who deserved more credit for the dynasty that followed. Was it Belichick's genius coaching and defensive schemes? Or was it Brady's ability to execute and perform in crucial moments? This debate would rage for 2 decades, but the truth is that neither man would have achieved what they did without the other. They were the perfect symbiotic relationship, each elevating the other's strengths and compensating for their weaknesses. Belichick gave Brady a system that played to his intelligence and accuracy. Brady gave Belichick a quarterback who would never undermine the team concept with ego or selfishness. As the 2001 season moved toward the playoffs, nobody outside the Patriots organization believed they were true contenders. They were a feel-good story, a team that had exceeded expectations with a journeyman coach and an unknown quarterback. The real powers of the AFC, the Oakland Raiders, the Pittsburgh Steelers, would surely end New England's Cinderella run. But Belichick and Brady had built something special. They had created a culture of preparation, discipline, and relentless execution. They were about to prove that their way wasn't just different, it was better. The very first Super Bowl, setting the tone for what was to come. The 2001 playoffs began with a sense of inevitability for most observers. The Patriots, while plucky and fun, would surely be exposed by teams with more talent and postseason experience. Their divisional round matchup against the Oakland Raiders seemed particularly daunting. The Raiders were loaded with Pro Bowl talent and were heavily favored. The game would be played at Foxborough Stadium in a driving snowstorm, creating conditions that seemed to favor the Raiders' physical smash-mouth style. What followed was one of the most controversial and dramatic games in NFL history. The Patriots and Raiders battled through brutal conditions, with snow accumulating on the field and visibility dropping to near zero at times. Late in the fourth quarter, with the Patriots trailing and driving for a potential game-tying field goal, disaster struck. Brady dropped back to pass, pumped once, and began to bring the ball back to his body when Raiders cornerback Charles Woodson blindsided him, knocking the ball loose. Oakland recovered what appeared to be a game-sealing fumble, but referee Walt Coleman reviewed the play and invoked an obscure rule known as the tuck rule. The rule stated that if a quarterback starts a throwing motion and then brings the ball back toward his body, it is still considered a forward pass until the ball is completely tucked away. Even though Brady had clearly changed his mind about throwing, the tuck rule meant the play was an incomplete pass, not a fumble. The Patriots retained possession. The controversy erupted immediately. Raiders players and fans were apoplectic. The call seemed to defy common sense. Brady had obviously fumbled the ball. But the rule, however obscure and seemingly unjust, was correctly applied. The Patriots drove for a game-tying field goal by Adam Vinatieri, who somehow kicked the ball through the uprights despite snow piled several inches high on the field. In overtime, Vinatieri kicked another field goal to win the game. The tuck rule game would haunt the Patriots for years, with critics using it as evidence that their success was built on luck and questionable officiating. But lost in the controversy was Brady's performance in impossibly difficult conditions. He had completed 32 of 52 passes for 312 yards in a blizzard, showing poise and accuracy that belied his inexperience. He had led a crucial fourth-quarter drive when the season was on the line. The lucky bounce might have kept the Patriots alive, but Brady's play had put them in position to capitalize on that luck. The following week, the Patriots traveled to Pittsburgh to face the Steelers in the AFC Championship game. Pittsburgh was defending its home field, which was notorious as one of the most hostile environments in football. The Steelers had a devastating defense and a powerful running game. They were favored to win convincingly. Instead, the Patriots dominated. Brady threw for 226 yards and avoided mistakes. The defense harassed Steelers quarterback Cordell Stewart into 3 interceptions. The Patriots won 30-24, securing their spot in Super Bowl 36. Their opponents would be the St. Louis Rams, a team so offensively explosive they had been dubbed the greatest show on turf. Led by quarterback Kurt Warner and featuring weapons like Marshall Faulk, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt and Zahir Hakim, the Rams had averaged 31 points per game during the regular season. They had demolished opponents all year with their high-octane passing attack and versatile rushing game. Entering the Super Bowl, they were 14-point favourites over the Patriots. Many analysts predicted a blowout. The narrative entering Super Bowl 36 was classic David versus Goliath. The Rams had superstars and swagger. The Patriots had a second-year quarterback nobody had heard of and a coach with a losing record as a head coach. When the teams were introduced before the game, the Rams elected to be announced individually, with each starter running onto the field amid pyrotechnics and fanfare. The Patriots, at Belichick's instruction, chose to be introduced as a team, running onto the field together in a unified mass. This small symbolic gesture encapsulated the philosophical difference between the franchises. The game itself was tense and defensive. Belichick's game plan, which would later be enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, focused on disrupting the Rams' timing with physical coverage and creative blitz packages. The Patriots' defense harassed Warner relentlessly, hitting him 19 times and forcing him into bad decisions. Brady, meanwhile, managed the game expertly, avoiding turnovers and moving the chains when needed. As the fourth quarter began, the Rams finally broke through, scoring 10 points to take a 17-3 lead. The dynasty that hadn't yet begun seemed to be ending before it started, but the Patriots responded with poise that seemed impossible for such a young team. Brady led 2 touchdown drives to tie the game at 17 with under 2 minutes remaining. Most observers expected overtime. Then came the moment that defined everything. The Patriots took possession at their own 17-yard line with 1 minute 21 seconds remaining and no timeouts. Conventional wisdom dictated running out the clock and playing for overtime. Commentator John Madden said exactly that on the broadcast. "I don't think you want to do too much here. You want to get this game into overtime." Even Belichick could have been forgiven for playing it safe. Instead, the coach trusted his unknown quarterback. Belichick told Brady to go win the game. What followed was a masterclass in 2-minute drill execution. Brady completed 5 of 8 passes, moving the Patriots from their 17-yard line to the Rams' 30. With 7 seconds left, Adam Vinatieri trotted onto the field for a 48-yard field goal attempt. He drilled it through the uprights as time expired. The Patriots were Super Bowl champions. The image of Brady after that final kick captured everything about his unlikely ascent. He looked almost shocked, his arms raised in jubilation, but his face showing disbelief. He had just won a Super Bowl as a second-year player who had been drafted 199th overall. He had outdueled the MVP quarterback of the most explosive offense in football. He had executed a game-winning drive with ice in his veins. Brady was named Super Bowl MVP, the culmination of perhaps the most improbable rise from obscurity in sports history. But the victory was about more than one player. It validated Belichick's system and the Patriot way. It proved that discipline, preparation, and team-first mentality could triumph over superior talent. It showed that an overlooked coach and a forgotten quarterback could build something extraordinary if they were willing to work harder and smarter than everyone else. The 2001 Super Bowl championship set a template that would define the Patriots for 2 decades. Defense, methodical offense, clutch performance, and absolute refusal to accept limitations. The reigning empire from underdog to undeniable dynasty. The early 2000s dominance. The 2001 Super Bowl victory could have been a fluke, a perfect storm of circumstances that aligned for one magical season. Many champions fade after their surprising triumph, unable to sustain the magic. The Patriots of 2002 seemed to confirm this narrative. Despite another excellent defensive performance, the team finished 9-7 and missed the playoffs entirely. Brady's statistics regressed slightly, and the offense struggled with consistency. Critics who had dismissed the 2001 championship as a lucky aberration felt vindicated. But behind the scenes, the Patriots were building something sustainable. Belichick continued to refine his system, adding players who fit his culture rather than chasing high-priced free agents. The scouting department, led by the analytically minded Scott Pioli, identified undervalued players from small schools and late draft rounds. Brady spent the off-season obsessing over his mechanics, working with quarterback guru Tom Martinez to refine his footwork and release. The organization was learning from its setback, using 2002 as motivation rather than accepting it as their ceiling. The 2003 season announced the Patriots' arrival as a legitimate dynasty. They opened with a devastating statement, winning their first 12 games and not tasting defeat until late November. Brady had evolved from game manager to genuinely elite quarterback. His completion percentage jumped to over 60%, and he threw 23 touchdowns against just 12 interceptions. More importantly, he had developed an almost telepathic connection with his receivers, particularly Troy Brown and Dion Branch. The offense was no longer just avoiding mistakes. It was actively winning games. The defense, meanwhile, had become historically good. Belichick's complex schemes confused opposing quarterbacks weakly. The Patriots led the league in points allowed, surrendering just under 15 points per game. They had playmakers at every level, Ty Law and Asante Samuel in the secondary, Willie McGinnis and Teddy Bruschi at linebacker, Richard Seymour and Ty Warren on the defensive line. This wasn't just a good defense. It was a systematic destruction of opposing offenses. The Patriots rolled through the playoffs, dispatching the Tennessee Titans and Indianapolis Colts to reach Super Bowl 38. Their opponent was the Carolina Panthers, a team that had also shocked the football world with a worst-to-first turnaround. The game would be remembered as one of the most entertaining Super Bowls ever played, featuring 37 combined points in the fourth quarter alone after a defensive struggle through 3 quarters. Once again, the game came down to the final moments. Tied at 29 with under 2 minutes remaining, Brady took control. He completed 5 straight passes, moving the Patriots into field goal range with methodical precision. Adam Vinatieri kicked his second Super Bowl winning field goal in 3 years, delivering another championship to New England. Brady threw for 354 yards and 3 touchdowns, earning his second Super Bowl MVP award. The 2003 championship was different from 2001. The Patriots were no longer underdogs or lucky upstarts. They were legitimately the best team in football, with elite execution on both sides of the ball. Brady had firmly established himself among the league's elite quarterbacks. Belichick had proven his system was replicable and sustainable. The Patriot way was no longer a curiosity, it was the standard. The following season provided the ultimate validation. The Patriots went 14-2 in the regular season, extending their winning streak to an NFL record 21 consecutive games, spanning 2 seasons. Brady's development continued its upward trajectory. He threw 28 touchdowns against just 14 interceptions, while completing over 60% of his passes. The offense had added Corey Dillon, a disgruntled running back from Cincinnati, who flourished in New England's structured environment, rushing for over 1,600 yards. The 2004 playoffs were a coronation. The Patriots demolished the Colts in the divisional round, then outlasted the Steelers in the AFC Championship despite Pittsburgh's ferocious defense. In Super Bowl 39, they faced the Philadelphia Eagles and their explosive offense led by Donovan McNabb and Terrell Owens. The Patriots won 24-21 in a game that was closer than the final score suggested. Brady threw for 236 yards and 2 touchdowns, earning his 3rd Super Bowl MVP award in 4 years. 3 championships in 4 years, 9 straight playoff victories, a winning streak that spanned nearly 2 full seasons. The Patriots had officially established a dynasty. They had answered every question, silenced every critic, and proven that their success was built on a sustainable model rather than luck or circumstance. Brady, at just 27 years old, already had more Super Bowl rings than legendary quarterbacks like Dan Marino, Jim Kelly, and Warren Moon combined. The early 2000s dominance established several crucial elements of the Patriots' identity. First, they perfected the art of complementary football. The defense kept games close, and Brady executed efficiently to capitalize on opportunities. They rarely beat themselves with penalties or turnovers. Second, they developed an almost arrogant confidence in close games. While other teams panicked in pressure situations, the Patriots seemed to thrive, with Brady orchestrating game-winning drives with machine-like precision. Third, they proved that building through the draft and avoiding expensive free agents could work if you had the right system and culture. Perhaps most importantly, the dynasty validated Tom Brady as a generational talent. The debate about whether he was a system quarterback propped up by Belichick's genius had largely evaporated. While the system certainly helped, Brady's performances in crucial moments demonstrated ability that transcended scheme. His pocket presence, accuracy under pressure, and mental processing speed were elite by any measure. He wasn't succeeding despite his physical limitations. He was succeeding because his mental approach and technical precision compensated for those limitations. The Patriots had transformed from forgotten franchise to feared juggernaut in less than 5 years. They had created a blueprint for sustainable success that other teams would study and attempt to replicate for decades. They had proven that intelligence, preparation, and culture could triumph over raw talent, and they had done it all with a 6th-round draft pick who had almost gone undrafted leading the way. The empire was established. Now came the challenge of maintaining it. Overcoming challenges and controversies, Spygate and Deflategate as tests. The Patriots dynasty hit its first major turbulence in 2007, though it began as arguably the greatest season in NFL history. After missing the playoffs in 2005 and losing in the divisional round in 2006, the Patriots retooled dramatically. They acquired Randy Moss, a supremely talented but allegedly difficult wide receiver from the Oakland Raiders for just a 4th-round pick. They signed Wes Welker, a diminutive slot receiver from the Miami Dolphins. The additions transformed the offense from methodical to explosive. The results were stunning. Brady and Moss developed instant chemistry, with the receiver's otherworldly speed and leaping ability perfectly complementing Brady's timing and anticipation. Brady threw a then-record 50 touchdown passes against just 8 interceptions. The Patriots became the first team to complete a 16-0 regular season since the NFL expanded to 16 games. They averaged nearly 37 points per game while obliterating opponents. This wasn't the careful, defensive-minded Patriots of the early dynasty. This was an offensive juggernaut that demoralized opponents. But during this dominant season, controversy erupted. In Week 1 against the Jets, Patriots video assistant Matt Estrella was caught filming New York's defensive signals from the sideline. The NFL investigated and determined the Patriots had been illegally videotaping opponents' signals since at least 2000. Commissioner Roger Goodell levied unprecedented punishments. The Patriots were fined $750,000, forfeited a 1st-round draft pick, and Belichick personally was fined $500,000, the maximum allowable under league rules. Spygate, as the scandal became known, ignited fierce debate about the legitimacy of the Patriots' championships. Critics argued that their success had been built on systematic cheating. They pointed to the early dynasty years and questioned whether those Super Bowl victories had been tainted by illicit intelligence gathering. Patriots supporters countered that many teams engaged in similar practices, that the advantage gained was minimal, and that the punishment was disproportionate to the offense. The controversy devastated the Patriots' carefully cultivated image as the smartest, most prepared team in football. The Patriot way suddenly seemed less like admirable discipline and more like ruthless corner-cutting. Brady, while not directly implicated in Spygate, found himself defending the organization and his accomplishments. The shadow of suspicion would hang over every future success. The 2007 season, which should have been a triumphant march to perfection, ended in crushing disappointment. The Patriots reached Super Bowl 42, having won 18 consecutive games. Their opponent was the New York Giants, a wildcard team they had defeated in the final game of the regular season. The Patriots were overwhelming favourites. Victory would cement them as the greatest team in NFL history. Instead, the Giants' defense harassed Brady all night, sacking him 5 times and constantly disrupting his timing. The game came down to the final minute, with the Patriots clinging to a 14-10 lead. Giants quarterback Eli Manning engineered a miraculous drive, capped by an incredible helmet catch by David Tyree, where he pinned the ball against his helmet while being tackled. Moments later, Plaxico Burress caught the game-winning touchdown. The perfect season died 4 plays from completion. The loss was crushing. Brady had played perhaps the worst game of his career on the biggest stage. The invincible juggernaut had been exposed as mortal. The Spygate allegations seemed validated. Without their allegedly illicit advantages, critics argued, the Patriots couldn't finish the job. The defeat would haunt Brady for years. The Patriots remained competitive through the late 2000s and early 2000s, reaching the playoffs consistently, but unable to capture another championship. They lost Super Bowl 46 to the Giants again in 2012, another crushing defeat that saw Brady lead a late touchdown drive only to watch his defense collapse. The dynasty seemed over. Brady was aging, approaching his mid-30s, the point when most quarterbacks begin declining. Questions emerged about whether he could still perform at an elite level without the peak physical abilities of his youth. Then came Deflategate, a controversy that would dwarf Spygate in its scope and absurdity. Following the 2014 AFC Championship game, where the Patriots destroyed the Indianapolis Colts 45-7, allegations emerged that New England had used underinflated footballs. The NFL launched an extensive investigation, hiring attorney Ted Wells to examine whether the Patriots had deliberately deflated footballs to gain a competitive advantage. The Wells report concluded it was more probable than not that Patriots equipment staff had deflated the footballs and that Brady was generally aware of the scheme. The NFL suspended Brady for 4 games, fined the Patriots $1 million, and stripped them of draft picks. Brady appealed, and the case became a protracted legal battle that reached federal court. He initially won his appeal, but ultimately lost when a circuit court reinstated the suspension. The Deflategate controversy was different from Spygate in crucial ways. First, Brady was directly implicated and punished. Second, the science behind the allegations was questionable. Multiple physicists and chemists argued that the deflation could be explained by the ideal gas law and weather conditions. Third, the punishment seemed wildly disproportionate to the alleged offence. Many wondered why slightly deflated footballs warranted a harsher penalty than domestic violence cases. Fourth, the investigation revealed unflattering text messages where equipment staff referred to Brady as the deflator, though Brady denied knowledge of any scheme. Brady's supporters saw Deflategate as a witch hunt, a desperate attempt by the league office and rival teams to tear down the dynasty through manufactured scandal. His detractors saw it as confirmation that the Patriots' success had always relied on bending or breaking rules. The truth, as is often the case, was probably somewhere in between, likely some minor rule breaking that was blown out of proportion, but still represented a pattern of pushing boundaries. What both controversies revealed was how the Patriots' sustained excellence had created armies of enemies. jealousy and resentment are natural byproducts of dominance. Other fan bases wanted to believe that New England's success was ill-gotten rather than earned. The controversies provided ammunition for these beliefs. Every Patriots victory became suspect. Every Brady accomplishment was questioned. The remarkable aspect of how Brady and the Patriots responded to these controversies was their defiance. Rather than crumbling under scrutiny, they seemed energized by it. Brady used the criticism as motivation, posting pictures of himself with 4 fingers raised, representing his impending 4-game suspension, and adopting a siege mentality. The organization rallied around the idea that everyone was against them, that they had to prove their worth repeatedly. In many ways, the controversies strengthened rather than weakened the dynasty. They provided perpetual motivation, a constant reminder that success breeds contempt, and that the only response is continued excellence. Brady and Belichick became even more determined to prove their legitimacy through dominant performances. The challenges and controversies weren't just obstacles to overcome, they became fuel for the sustained excellence that would define the next phase of the dynasty. The pursuit of perfection and the sustained excellence across eras. Following the 4-game Deflategate suspension in 2016, many observers expected Brady to show signs of decline. He was 39 years old, an age when most quarterbacks are retired or clearly diminished. Instead, Brady delivered the greatest season of his career and perhaps the greatest season any quarterback has ever produced. After returning from suspension, Brady was transcendent. He threw 28 touchdown passes against just 2 interceptions over the final 12 games of the regular season. His touchdown-to-interception ratio of 14-1 was absurd. He led the league in completion percentage, yards per attempt, and passer rating. The Patriots went 11-1 in his starts, securing the number 1 seed in the AFC. Brady won his 2nd MVP award, his first since 2007, in what amounted to a middle finger to everyone who had questioned his integrity. The 2016 playoffs featured the most dramatic comeback in Super Bowl history. After trailing the Atlanta Falcons 28-3 in the 3rd quarter of Super Bowl 51, the Patriots staged an impossible rally. Brady was surgical in orchestrating the comeback, completing 26 of his final 33 passes. He threw for 466 yards and 2 touchdowns, while leading 3 consecutive touchdown drives. The Patriots tied the game in the final seconds of regulation, then won in overtime on a James White rushing touchdown. The comeback validated everything. It proved Brady's greatness beyond any doubt. It silenced the critics who attributed his success to cheating or system. It demonstrated mental toughness and competitive fire that transcended physical ability. At 39 years old, coming off a suspension meant to humiliate him, Brady had delivered the greatest performance in Super Bowl history. His 5th championship tied him with Charles Haley for the most Super Bowl rings by any player in history. But Brady wasn't finished. The 2017 season brought another MVP-caliber performance, with Brady throwing 32 touchdowns and leading the Patriots back to the Super Bowl. Though they lost to the Eagles in Super Bowl 52, despite Brady throwing for 505 yards and 3 touchdowns, the message was clear. Even in his early 40s, Brady remained at the absolute pinnacle of the sport. The sustained excellence across different eras of football was unprecedented. The NFL that Brady entered in 2000 was dramatically different from the NFL of the late 2000s. Rules had changed to favor passing offenses. Defensive strategies had evolved to counter these rule changes. Personnel around Brady had turned over multiple times, with receivers, running backs, and offensive linemen coming and going. Offensive coordinators had changed. Yet through all these transitions, Brady remained not just effective, but elite. Part of Brady's longevity stemmed from his fanatical attention to body maintenance and conditioning. In his 30s, he had developed a comprehensive fitness and nutrition program called the TB12 method, with his personal trainer Alex Guerrero. The regimen emphasized pliability over traditional strength training, extensive stretching, resistance band work, and a strict diet that eliminated nightshade vegetables, white flour, white sugar, and most dairy. Critics mocked the approach as pseudoscience, but the results were undeniable. Brady was playing better at 39 than most quarterbacks play at 29. Brady also evolved his playing style as he aged. The mobile, scrambling quarterback of his youth gave way to a pure pocket passer who released the ball with incredible speed. His pre-snap reads became even more sophisticated, allowing him to diagnose defenses and adjust protections without needing to extend plays with his legs. He became even more willing to take short completions, understanding that sustaining drives was more important than big plays. Every aspect of his game was optimized for longevity and efficiency. The mental side of Brady's game also reached new heights. He studied film more obsessively than ever, often watching game footage until 2 or 3 in the morning. He could recall specific plays from games years earlier, complete with defensive alignments and coverage shells. His ability to process information in real time became legendary. He could identify blitzes, adjust protections, change routes, and deliver the ball to the hot receiver all within seconds of the snap. This cognitive advantage compensated for any physical decline. Perhaps most remarkably, Brady maintained his competitive fire even as the accolades piled up. Many champions become satisfied after achieving historic success, losing the hunger that drove them to greatness. Brady seemed to become more motivated with each passing year. Every slight, every criticism, every younger quarterback who was proclaimed the next big thing became fuel. He kept lists of perceived disrespects, analysts who predicted his decline, players who claimed they were better, teams that didn't give him proper credit. This paranoid edge, bordering on unhealthy obsession, kept him sharp when age should have dulled him. The 2018 season brought championship number 6. The Patriots defeated the Los Angeles Rams 13-3 in one of the lowest scoring Super Bowls ever. Brady's statistics were modest, 262 yards and no touchdowns, but he executed the game plan perfectly, avoiding mistakes and making crucial throws on 3rd down. At 41 years old, he became the oldest quarterback ever to win a Super Bowl. He now had more championships than any player in NFL history, surpassing Charles Haley and establishing a record that seemed impossible to break. The sustained excellence wasn't just about personal achievement. Brady had now won championships in 3 different decades, with dramatically different rosters and supporting casts. The 2001 Patriots bore little resemblance to the 2018 Patriots beyond Brady and Belichick. He had won with defensive-minded teams and offensive juggernauts. He had won with Hall of Fame receivers like Randy Moss, and with unheralded slot receivers like Wes Welker and Julian Edelman. He had adapted to rule changes, defensive innovations, and evolving offensive philosophies. The constant through all these changes was Brady's preparation, execution, and will to win. By the end of the 2019 season, tensions were emerging between Brady and the Patriots organization. He was frustrated with the lack of offensive weapons, feeling the team had failed to surround him with adequate talent. The offense had sputtered throughout the season, with Brady posting career worsts in several statistical categories. In the wildcard round, the Patriots lost at home to the Tennessee Titans, a humiliating defeat that seemed to signal the end of an era. Brady's contract was expiring, and for the first time in 2 decades, his future with New England was genuinely uncertain. The dynasty had spanned nearly 2 decades, included 6 Super Bowl championships, 9 Super Bowl appearances, and countless records. Brady had transformed from overlooked draft pick to arguably the greatest player in NFL history. He had overcome scandals, controversies, and countless predictions of his decline. He had adapted and evolved, finding new ways to excel as the game changed around him. The Patriot way had been tested and proven across multiple eras of football. The sustained excellence was unprecedented in professional sports, comparable only to dynasties like the Bill Russell Celtics, the Joe Montana 49ers, or the Michael Jordan Bulls. But as the 2000s ended, a question loomed. Could Brady prove he was more than just a product of Belichick's system? Could he succeed without the infrastructure, defense, and coaching that had supported him for 20 years? Was he truly the greatest quarterback ever, or had his success been manufactured by the greatest coach ever? These questions would soon be answered in the most definitive way possible. The shocking departure from New England and the last dance narrative. In March 2020, Tom Brady announced he was leaving the New England Patriots. The news sent shockwaves through the sports world. Brady had been the face of the franchise for 20 years. He had never played for another team. He had never thrown a pass in anything other than a Patriots uniform. The partnership with Belichick had become one of the most successful coach-quarterback relationships in sports history. Yet it was ending, and ending acrimoniously. The details of the split revealed long-simmering tensions. Brady felt disrespected by the organization's unwillingness to commit to him long-term. The Patriots had reportedly explored trading him in previous years, viewing him as a depreciating asset approaching the end of his career. They had failed to provide him with elite offensive weapons, instead employing a bargain basement approach to building the receiving corps. The final straw appeared to be the organization's treatment of his trainer Alex Guerrero and their skepticism of his TB12 method. Brady's decision to leave was stunning because it was unprecedented. Legendary players rarely leave their franchises in their 40s. They retire as lifelong members of their teams, going out on their terms in familiar uniforms. Players like Derek Jeter, Kobe Bryant, and Tim Duncan spent their entire careers with one organization. Brady, at 42 years old, was choosing to start over somewhere new. The move was either bold or delusional, depending on whom you asked. His destination shocked everyone, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a franchise that had missed the playoffs 12 consecutive years. The Bucs had talented pieces, wide receivers Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, tight end O.J. Howard, a young defense with potential, but they had been held back by inconsistent quarterback play. Jameis Winston, their previous starter, had thrown 30 interceptions in 2019 despite also throwing for over 5,000 yards. Tampa needed stability and leadership at the position. The narrative framing Brady's move was immediately clear. This was his last dance, a final attempt to prove his greatness was independent of Belichick's system. Critics had long argued that Brady was a system quarterback, that any competent player could succeed in New England's structure with that defense and coaching. Now he would have to prove them wrong. He would be operating in a new system, with a new coach, Bruce Arians, new teammates, and a franchise with a losing culture. Success was far from guaranteed. The skepticism was intense. Brady would be 43 years old by the start of the 2020 season, making him the oldest starting quarterback in the league by far. He was joining a team that had gone 7-9 the previous year. He would be learning a new offensive system for the first time in 2 decades. He would be playing in a division with Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints, Matt Ryan and the Atlanta Falcons, and Teddy Bridgewater and the Carolina Panthers, all formidable opponents. Many analysts predicted a disastrous final chapter to an otherwise legendary career. The media fixated on the comparison with Michael Jordan's stint with the Washington Wizards. Jordan had returned from retirement at age 38 to play for a mediocre team, posting decent individual numbers but failing to recapture his championship glory. The Wizards never made it past the first round with Jordan. Many expected Brady's Tampa tenure to follow a similar trajectory, respectable individual play, masking the reality that his best days were behind him and he couldn't single-handedly transform a losing franchise. Even Brady's signing of former teammates Rob Gronkowski, coaxed out of retirement, and Antonio Brown, who had flamed out with multiple teams after, leaving Pittsburgh was viewed skeptically. Gronkowski hadn't played in a year and had retired due to injuries and wear. Brown was supremely talented but came with enormous character concerns and legal issues. The move seemed desperate, an aging quarterback trying to recreate past magic with similarly past their prime players. The 2020 season began with COVID-19 protocols limiting practices and team activities. Brady couldn't build chemistry with his new receivers through normal off-season work. The Buccaneers started slowly, losing to the Saints twice in the first half of the season. Brady threw 2 interceptions in one of those losses, looking uncomfortable in the new system. The offense sputtered at times, failing to score more than 23 points in 4 of their first 8 games. The "I told you so" crowd was loud. Brady without Belichick looked ordinary, maybe even washed. But around mid-season, something shifted. Brady began to develop timing with his receivers. The offense started clicking, scoring over 30 points in 5 consecutive games. Brady's pre-snap mastery became evident as he diagnosed Tampa's opponents with ease. The Buccaneers' defense, loaded with talent but previously underperforming, began playing to its potential. Tampa won their final 4 regular season games to finish 11-5 and secure a wild-card playoff berth. The narrative of Brady's last dance was taking shape. This wasn't just about personal vindication, it was about legacy. Could he prove that his greatness transcended any single coach or system? Could he silence the critics who had spent 20 years claiming his success was situational? Could he, at 43 years old, achieve what no quarterback had ever done? Win a championship with 2 different franchises? The answers would come in the most dramatic fashion possible. Transforming a struggling franchise into a Super Bowl contender overnight. The transformation of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from perennial losers to championship contenders was swift and total. But it wasn't just about Brady's on-field performance. It was about the culture shift he brought to a franchise that had forgotten how to win. From day one, Brady attacked his new situation with the same obsessive preparation that had defined his career. He organized unofficial throwing sessions with his receivers in Berkeley Preparatory School in Tampa, working on timing and routes outside of official team activities. He studied film constantly, learning defensive coordinator Todd Bowles' system and how to maximize its potential. He met individually with each offensive player, learning their strengths and preferences, building the rapport necessary for success. The cultural impact was immediate. The Buccaneers had been a talented but undisciplined team. They committed penalties at crucial moments. They made mental errors. They lacked the attention to detail that separates good teams from great ones. Brady's presence changed the entire atmosphere. Players watched him work and felt compelled to match his intensity. His film study sessions became legendary within the building. He would catch details that even coaches missed. Bruce Arians, the Buccaneers' head coach, initially had concerns about Brady's legendary intensity and demands. Arians was known for his laid-back, player-friendly approach. Brady was known for being demanding and perfectionist, but the two found common ground in their shared obsession with winning. Arians gave Brady unprecedented freedom at the line of scrimmage, allowing him to change plays and protections based on what he saw. This trust was crucial. It meant Brady could operate his offense within Arians' structure. The weapons around Brady were elite, perhaps better than he'd had in a decade. Mike Evans was a physical, dominant receiver who won contested catches. Chris Godwin was a precise route runner who thrived in the intermediate passing game. Rob Gronkowski, despite being a year removed from football and clearly not the athletic marvel he'd once been, provided a security blanket and red zone weapon. Antonio Brown, once he was added mid-season after serving a suspension, gave the offense another explosive element. But the most crucial element was the defense. The Buccaneers had invested heavily in their defensive line, featuring Jason Pierre-Paul, Shaquille Barrett, and Ndamukong Suh. They had playmakers in the secondary with Carlton Davis and Antoine Winfield Jr. Coordinator Todd Bowles, who had previously been a head coach with the Jets, implemented an aggressive scheme that confused opposing quarterbacks. This wasn't the legendary defenses of Brady's early Patriots years, but it was formidable. The marriage of Brady's offensive efficiency with Tampa's defensive aggression created a complete team. Brady didn't need to score 40 points per game. He just needed to avoid mistakes and capitalize on the opportunities the defense created. This complementary football was Brady's comfort zone, reminiscent of his early championship teams. He was the conductor of an orchestra rather than a one-man show. As the regular season progressed, the Buccaneers' identity solidified. They could win close games with methodical drives. They could blow teams out with explosive plays. They could win defensive struggles or shootouts. The versatility made them dangerous, but also unpredictable. Playoff teams couldn't prepare for one specific Tampa approach, because the Buccaneers could beat you multiple ways. The most telling moment of the regular season came in Week 12 against the Kansas City Chiefs, the defending Super Bowl champions. The Chiefs had Patrick Mahomes, the young superstar quarterback who was widely viewed as Brady's heir apparent. This wasn't just a regular season game, it was a symbolic passing of the torch. The Chiefs won 27-24 with Mahomes outdueling Brady in a thrilling contest. The result seemed to confirm that Brady's time was ending and Mahomes represented the future. But the loss galvanized the Buccaneers. They didn't view it as a sign they couldn't compete with the league's best. They viewed it as a learning experience, exposing weaknesses they could fix before a potential rematch in the playoffs. Brady in particular seemed energized by the defeat. He had been counted out before and had always responded. This would be no different. The regular season ended with Tampa securing the 5 seed in the NFC, meaning they would be on the road throughout the playoffs. No team had ever won a Super Bowl by winning 3 road playoff games. The odds seemed stacked against them, but Brady had spent his entire career defying odds. The last dance was about to begin in earnest. The ultimate validation, winning a championship with a new team at 43. The 2020 NFL playoffs began with the Buccaneers traveling to Washington to face the football team in the wildcard round. Washington had won a weak NFC East with a 7-9 record and weren't expected to challenge Tampa. The Buccaneers dominated 31-23, with Brady throwing for 2 touchdowns and the defense suffocating Washington's offense. It was a professional, if unspectacular, victory that accomplished the primary goal, advancing. The divisional round brought a much stiffer test. A trip to New Orleans to face the Saints, who had swept Tampa in the regular season by a combined score of 72-26. Drew Brees, Brady's contemporary and potential rival for the greatest of all-time title, was having another excellent season. The Saints had home field advantage and had owned the Buccaneers all year. Nobody expected Tampa to win. Brady delivered one of the most complete performances of his career. He threw for 201 yards and 2 touchdowns, but more importantly, he committed 0 turnovers, while the Bucs' defense harassed Brees into 3 interceptions. The Buccaneers won 30-20, exorcising the demons of their regular season failures against New Orleans. After the game, Brady was seen enthusiastically celebrating, the joy on his face evident. He wasn't just winning, he was proving doubters wrong with each victory. The NFC Championship game required a trip to Lambeau Field to face Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. Rodgers had won his 3rd MVP award that season and was the betting favourite to win the Super Bowl. The Packers had the number 1 seed and home field advantage in the frozen tundra of Wisconsin. Green Bay was favoured by 3 points. Once again, Brady was the underdog. The game was tense throughout. The Packers took a 10-6 lead into halftime, and the outcome was very much in doubt. But in the second half, Brady was surgical. He threw 3 touchdown passes, including a perfectly placed ball to Scotty Miller in the final seconds of the first half that gave Tampa momentum. The defense intercepted Rodgers 3 times, including a crucial late pick that sealed the victory. The Buccaneers won 31-26, punching their ticket to Super Bowl 55. The symbolism was overwhelming. Brady had just defeated the league MVP in the championship game, on the road, in conditions that should have favoured the younger, more mobile quarterback. At 43 years old, he was heading to his 10th Super Bowl, more than any other player in history and more than any entire franchise. He had done it with a new team, in a new system, after everyone said it was impossible. The last dance was one game away from a perfect ending. Super Bowl 55 would be played at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, making the Buccaneers the first team ever to play a Super Bowl in their home stadium. Their opponents were the Kansas City Chiefs, the team that had beaten them at the regular season. Patrick Mahomes was at the peak of his powers, coming off a Super Bowl MVP performance the previous year. The Chiefs had one of the most explosive offenses in NFL history, featuring Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and a brilliant play caller in Andy Reid. Kansas City was favoured by 3 points. The game was no contest. The Buccaneers' defense dominated from the opening drive, pressuring Mahomes relentlessly. Brady, meanwhile, was flawless. He completed 21 of 29 passes for 201 yards and 3 touchdowns without an interception. He picked apart Kansas City's defense with short, precise passes, moving the chains methodically and capitalizing on red zone opportunities. The Buccaneers won 31-9, a shocking blowout that left no doubt about which team was superior that night. Brady's performance earned him his 5th Super Bowl MVP award, extending his record in that category as well. At 43 years old, he had become the oldest quarterback to win a Super Bowl and Super Bowl MVP. He had won 7 championships total, more than any player in NFL history by a wide margin. He had definitively answered every question about his greatness being system-dependent or Belichick-derived. He had proven, beyond any shadow of doubt, that his success transcended any particular coach, system, or situation. The image of Brady hoisting the Lombardi Trophy in his Buccaneers uniform was surreal. For 20 years he had been synonymous with the Patriots. Now he had created an entirely new chapter, one that validated everything about his legacy. The critics who had attributed his success to Belichick were silenced. Brady had just won a championship with a team that had missed the playoffs for over a decade before his arrival. The skeptics who thought he was too old were silenced. He had just delivered one of the most dominant playoff runs in NFL history at an age when most quarterbacks are long retired. The 2020 championship was different from the 6 he had won in New England. Those had been built over time, with Brady growing alongside the organization. This one required instant transformation, immediate impact, complete reinvention. It required proving himself all over again, earning the respect of new teammates, learning new systems, adapting to new structures. And he had done it while dealing with COVID-19 restrictions, limited practice time, and all the challenges of being 43 years old in a young man's game. Brady returned for the 2021 season and delivered arguably his best statistical year ever. He threw for over 5,000 yards and 43 touchdowns, while leading the Buccaneers to a 13-4 record. Though they lost in the divisional round to the eventual champion Rams, Brady had proven the 2020 championship was no fluke. At 44 years old, he was still playing at an MVP level. He announced his retirement after the season, then unretired 6 weeks later, committing to one more year. The 2022 season was tumultuous. Brady was dealing with personal issues, including a divorce from his wife Gisele Bündchen. His play remained solid but lacked the magic of previous years. The Buccaneers struggled to an 8-9 record but still won a weak NFC South division. They lost in the wildcard round to the Dallas Cowboys, ending Brady's career on a disappointing note. He announced his retirement for the second time in February 2023, and this time it stuck. The Tampa Bay chapter, while brief, had accomplished everything Brady needed it to. He had silenced his critics completely and totally. He had proven his greatness was independent of any particular coach or system. He had won a championship with a second franchise, something only Peyton Manning had previously accomplished in the Super Bowl era. He had extended his records to absurd levels: 10 Super Bowl appearances, 7 championships, 5 MVP awards. The Last Dance had been a triumph. The bedtime story lessons beyond talent, the relentless work ethic and obsession with winning. If there's one lesson that defines Tom Brady's career beyond all others, it's that talent alone is never sufficient for sustained greatness. Brady was not the most physically gifted quarterback of his generation. He wasn't the strongest arm. That belonged to players like Brett Favre or Patrick Mahomes. He wasn't the most mobile. Countless dual-threat quarterbacks could run circles around him. He wasn't the most naturally accurate. Quarterbacks like Drew Brees completed higher percentages of their passes in their prime. What separated Brady wasn't what he was born with. It was what he was willing to do to maximize every ounce of ability he possessed. Brady's work ethic bordered on pathological. He was famous for arriving at team facilities before dawn and leaving long after dark. While other players relaxed during the off-season, Brady was studying film, working with his trainers, refining his mechanics. His preparation for games was legendary. He watched every snap of his opponent's previous games, studying defensive coordinators' tendencies, memorizing individual defenders' habits and tells. By the time he stepped on the field Sunday, he had already played the game dozens of times in his mind. This preparation manifested in his pre-snap routine. Brady became famous for his ability to diagnose defenses instantly, checking to new plays, adjusting protections, and identifying defensive intentions before the ball was snapped. These adjustments looked effortless on television, but they were the product of countless hours studying tendencies and scenarios. He could recall specific situations from games played years earlier and how defences had responded. This institutional knowledge, built through obsessive film study, gave him an advantage that physical gifts never could. Brady's obsession extended to his diet and fitness regimen. As he aged, he became increasingly radical in his approach to body maintenance. The TB12 method that he developed with Alex Guerrero was controversial in its rejection of traditional strength training in favour of pliability work. Extensive stretching, massage and resistance band exercises designed to keep muscles long and supple rather than bulky and tight. Critics mocked the approach, but Brady's longevity spoke for itself. He was playing at an elite level in his mid-40s, while contemporaries who relied on traditional training methods had long since retired. His diet was equally extreme. Brady eliminated nightshade vegetables like tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants, claiming they caused inflammation. He avoided white flour, white sugar, dairy, coffee, alcohol, and most processed foods. His daily diet consisted primarily of vegetables, lean proteins like chicken and fish, whole grains, and healthy fats. He drank enormous amounts of water, reportedly consuming several gallons per day to maintain hydration and muscle pliability. Was this regimen scientifically validated? Not entirely. Many nutritionists questioned some of his approaches, but did it work for him? Undeniably yes. The work ethic wasn't just about physical preparation. Brady was obsessive about the mental game. He regularly consulted with sports psychologists to maintain his competitive edge and manage the pressure of high-stakes situations. He practiced visualization techniques, mentally rehearsing game situations so that when they occurred in real time, he had already experienced them dozens of times in his mind. This mental preparation helped explain his legendary calmness in pressure situations. He wasn't experiencing chaos for the first time. He was executing a scenario he had already mentally navigated. Brady's obsession with winning manifested in how he approached every situation, even practice. Teammates frequently mentioned that he treated practice reps with the same intensity as game situations. He berated players for mental errors in walkthroughs. He demanded perfection from his offensive line, his receivers, his running backs. This intensity could be off-putting. Not everyone appreciated Brady's harsh criticism or his demands for excellence. But it also raised the performance level of everyone around him. Players didn't want to let Brady down, didn't want to be the weak link that cost the team. This relentless approach created tension at times. Brady's personality wasn't universally beloved. Some teammates found him demanding to the point of being difficult. Some coaches bristled at his insistence on doing things his way. The controversies over Spygate and Deflategate, regardless of their validity, suggested a willingness to operate in grey areas if it provided competitive advantages. Brady wasn't a saint. He was a competitor who would do whatever it took, within reason, to win. But the results justified the approach. Brady's work ethic and obsession transformed him from a physically limited draft pick into the greatest winner in football history. He proved that preparation could overcome physical limitations, that mental processing could compensate for a slow 40-yard dash time, that obsessive attention to detail could negate superior athletic ability. His career became a testament to the idea that sustained excellence requires sustained effort, that there are no shortcuts to greatness, only the willingness to do what others won't. The lesson for aspiring champions in any field is clear. Talent is just the starting point. The separation between good and great, between competent and legendary, comes from the work nobody sees. It comes from the film study at midnight, the extra sets in the weight room, the dietary sacrifices, the mental preparation. Brady wasn't born great. He worked himself into greatness through an almost inhuman commitment to constant improvement. And he maintained that commitment not for one season or one championship run, but for 23 years, never relenting, never accepting that he had reached his ceiling, the importance of leadership and elevating those around him. Tom Brady's statistical accomplishments are staggering, but perhaps his most underrated skill was his ability to elevate the performance of players around him. Throughout his career, countless players, from unknown receivers to aging veterans to overlooked free agents, had career years playing alongside Brady. This wasn't coincidence. It was the result of Brady's unique leadership style and his ability to maximize the talents of his supporting cast. Consider the wide receivers who had their best seasons with Brady. Wes Welker was a diminutive slot receiver who had been a punt returner in Miami before signing with New England. Playing with Brady, he became one of the most productive receivers in football, catching over 100 passes in multiple seasons. Danny Amendola, viewed as a solid but unspectacular player in St. Louis, became a crucial weapon and clutch playoff performer in New England. Julian Edelman was a 7th-round pick who converted from quarterback in college. With Brady, he became a Super Bowl MVP. The pattern extended beyond New England. In Tampa Bay, Scotty Miller was a 6th-round pick from SMU, who had been a healthy scratch for games. Playing with Brady, he made crucial catches in the playoffs, including a touchdown right before halftime in the NFC Championship game. Cameron Brate was a journeyman tight end who had never caught more than 6 touchdowns in a season before Brady arrived. With Brady, he became a reliable red zone weapon. Brady's ability to elevate players stemmed from several factors. First, his pre-snap mastery meant he got receivers the ball in advantageous situations. He identified mismatches, exploited defensive weaknesses, and put players in positions to succeed. Second, his accuracy meant receivers didn't need to make difficult adjustments. The ball arrived on time and on target, allowing them to focus on making plays after the catch, rather than contorting to catch errant throws. Third, and perhaps most importantly, Brady's preparation was infectious. He demanded that receivers learn the entire route tree, understand defensive coverages, and know their assignments perfectly. He worked with them constantly on timing and adjustments. This investment in their development made them better players, not just better teammates. Players who had been inconsistent or unfocused found themselves raising their games simply because Brady expected it and wouldn't accept less. Brady's leadership style was complex and sometimes contradictory. On one hand, he could be demanding and harsh. He yelled at teammates during games, calling out mistakes immediately and publicly. He had no patience for mental errors or lack of preparation. Some players found this approach motivating, others found it demoralizing. But Brady never asked anything of his teammates that he didn't demand of himself first. On the other hand, Brady was remarkably selfless about his role. He took team-friendly contract restructures repeatedly, allowing the Patriots to retain or acquire other players. He never complained publicly about lack of offensive weapons, even when it was clear the Patriots were underinvesting in skill positions. He praised teammates constantly, deflecting credit for successes while taking responsibility for failures. This combination of high expectations and personal humility created a culture where players felt both challenged and supported. Brady's leadership was especially evident in how he handled younger players. He mentored backup quarterbacks like Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett, helping them develop even though they were potential threats to his position. He took young receivers aside after practices to work on routes and timing. He defended teammates publicly when they made mistakes, taking responsibility himself rather than throwing them under the bus. This protection created loyalty. Players wanted to perform for Brady because they knew he had their backs. The leadership extended beyond the field. Brady was involved in game planning sessions, offering input on play design and strategy. Coaches valued his perspective because of his experience and football intelligence. He served as a bridge between players and coaching staff, translating coaches' demands into player language and vice versa. This mediating role was crucial for team cohesion, especially in New England, where Belichick's demanding style could alienate players. Perhaps Brady's greatest leadership quality was his ability to perform in crucial moments, thereby inspiring confidence in his teammates. When games were on the line, players believed Brady would deliver. This confidence was self-fulfilling because players believed. They executed their assignments with conviction, which made Brady's job easier. The 22 game-winning drives he led in the playoffs are testaments not just to his skills, but to his teammates' faith in him. The lesson here extends far beyond football. Great leaders don't just excel individually. They raise the performance ceiling of everyone around them. They do this through demanding excellence, investing in others' development, modeling the behaviors they expect, taking responsibility for failures, and performing when pressure is highest. Brady transformed journeymen into champions not through magic, but through systematic elevation of their skills and confidence. In any field, this ability to make those around you better might be the most valuable skill a leader can possess. The longevity myth shattered, defying age and expectations. When Tom Brady played in Super Bowl 55 at age 43, he shattered nearly every conventional wisdom about athletic aging. In the NFL, quarterbacks are typically finished by their late 30s. The physical toll of being hit repeatedly, the mental wear of constant pressure, the accumulated injuries, they all combine to end careers. Very few quarterbacks have remained effective past 40, and none had ever won a championship at that age. Brady didn't just play at 43, he dominated, earning MVP honours in the biggest game of the year. The longevity was built on a foundation of extreme discipline and cutting-edge, sometimes controversial methods. Brady's TB12 approach emphasized flexibility and pliability over traditional strength training. Where most athletes lift heavy weights to build muscle mass and power, Brady focused on resistance band work and bodyweight exercises designed to keep muscles long and supple. The theory, developed with Alex Guerrero, was that tight, bulky muscles are more injury-prone and less functional than lengthened, pliable muscles. Whether this theory is scientifically valid remains debated. Many strength and conditioning experts question the approach, arguing that traditional resistance training provides benefits that pliability work cannot replicate. But for Brady, the proof was in the performance. He suffered fewer injuries in his late 30s and early 40s than he had in his 20s. He maintained arm strength and velocity while improving accuracy. His body seemed to be aging in reverse, defying the normal trajectory of athletic decline. The dietary restrictions played an equally important role. By eliminating inflammatory foods and maintaining strict hydration protocols, Brady reduced inflammation and promoted faster recovery. His body fat percentage remained remarkably low even in his 40s, similar to athletes half his age. He slept religiously, often 9 or 10 hours per night, wearing special pajamas designed to promote muscle recovery. Every aspect of his life was optimized for performance and longevity. But the physical preparation was only part of the equation. Brady's mental approach to aging was equally crucial. He refused to accept that 43 was old for a quarterback. He didn't view himself as being in decline or living on borrowed time. Instead, he maintained the mindset of a player in his prime, competing with the same intensity and expectations as he had at 25. This psychological rejection of age-related limitations may have been as important as any physical training. Brady also adapted his playing style to accommodate physical limitations. In his 20s, he had occasionally scrambled for first downs or extended plays with his legs. By his 40s, he had become an almost pure pocket passer, getting rid of the ball quickly and avoiding unnecessary hits. His average time from snap to throw decreased as he aged, compensating for reduced mobility. He took sacks strategically, going down rather than forcing throws that could result in interceptions. Every aspect of his game was calculated to minimize wear and maximize efficiency. The mental game became even more important with age. Brady's pre-snap recognition, always elite, became almost supernatural in his 40s. He could diagnose defensive schemes so quickly that he essentially played pitch and catch with his receivers, identifying the open man before the snap and delivering the ball immediately. This cognitive advantage compensated for any physical decline, allowing him to remain effective even as younger quarterbacks possessed superior physical tools. The longevity also required incredible luck with injuries. Brady suffered relatively few serious injuries throughout his career, with the notable exception of his torn ACL in 2008. He avoided the shoulder problems that ended many quarterbacks' careers. He avoided the back issues that plagued players like Peyton Manning. He avoided the concussions that forced players like Troy Aikman into early retirement. Some of this was luck, but some was also the product of his playing style, getting rid of the ball quickly, sliding when scrambling, avoiding unnecessary risks. Brady's longevity challenged fundamental assumptions about athletic aging in American sports. In soccer, players regularly compete at high levels into their late 30s. In baseball, pitchers and position players can remain effective into their 40s. But American football, with its physical violence and constant collisions, was thought to be different. Brady proved it wasn't. He demonstrated that with proper maintenance, intelligent play, and fanatical discipline, a football player could remain elite well past the age when decline was assumed to be inevitable. The lessons for aging athletes in all sports are profound. Brady showed that conventional wisdom about age-related decline is often self-fulfilling prophecy. When athletes accept that they're declining, they adjust their training and expectations accordingly, which causes actual decline. Brady rejected this narrative entirely, approaching his 40s with the same ambition and work ethic as his 20s. This mindset, combined with cutting-edge recovery methods, allowed him to defy biological expectations. For people outside of athletics, the message is equally powerful. Aging doesn't have to mean declining. With proper maintenance, physical, mental, nutritional, people can remain effective and competitive far longer than conventional wisdom suggests. The key is rejecting age-based limitations, maintaining discipline, adapting strategies to accommodate changed circumstances, and never accepting that decline is inevitable. Brady's 43-year-old Super Bowl MVP wasn't just athletic achievement, it was a philosophical statement about the malleability of aging itself, the enduring legacy, the statistical Mount Everest, records that may never be broken. Tom Brady's statistical accomplishments are so overwhelming that they strain credibility. When you list them comprehensively, they read like the achievements of multiple Hall of Fame careers compressed into one. 7 Super Bowl championships, 10 Super Bowl appearances, 5 Super Bowl MVP awards, 3 league MVP awards, 15 Pro Bowl selections, 6 All-Pro selections. These are the headline honours, but they barely scratch the surface of his dominance. The career passing statistics are equally absurd. Brady finished his career with 89,346 passing yards, more than any player in NFL history. He threw 649 touchdown passes, again the most ever. He completed 72,338 passes, another record. He started 318 regular season games and 48 playoff games, both records for a quarterback. These aren't just impressive numbers, they're the accumulated result of 23 seasons of sustained excellence. But the playoff statistics are where Brady's legacy truly crystallizes. His playoff performances were consistently elite, often surpassing his regular season numbers. He threw for 13,049 yards in the playoffs, more than double the second-place player. He threw 86 playoff touchdown passes, again far ahead of anyone else. He won 35 playoff games, a number that exceeds the playoff wins of entire franchises. He orchestrated 13 fourth-quarter comeback victories in the playoffs, demonstrating a clutch gene that became his signature. The Super Bowl statistics are in a category by themselves. Brady's 5 Super Bowl MVP awards are more than anyone else has ever won. His 7 championships are more than any entire franchise in the Super Bowl era. He played in 10 Super Bowls, appearing in nearly 20% of all Super Bowls ever played. In those games, he threw for 3,039 yards and 21 touchdowns, both records. He completed 277 passes in Super Bowls, another record. No player has ever been so consistently present on football's biggest stage. The longevity records are equally impressive. Brady became the oldest quarterback to start and win a Super Bowl at 43. He was the oldest quarterback to win league MVP at 40. He started every game in 17 different seasons, demonstrating remarkable durability. He played with 4 different head coaches, Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick, Bruce Arians and Todd Bowles, and won championships with 2 of them. He played in 4 different decades, the 1990s, 2000s, 2010s and 2020s, winning championships in 3 of them. Some records seem almost impossible to break. The 7 championships, for instance, would require a quarterback to win 3 Super Bowls before age 30, and then 4 more by age 43. Given that most quarterbacks never win a single championship, this level of sustained success seems nearly unreplicable. The 10 Super Bowl appearances would require a quarterback to make the Super Bowl in half of their career seasons over 20 years. The odds of this happening again are infinitesimal. The playoff statistics are similarly daunting. To match Brady's 35 playoff wins, a quarterback would need to average 4 playoff wins per year for nearly 9 consecutive seasons. That means not just making the playoffs consistently, but advancing deep into them annually. The 35 wins represent making the Super Bowl nearly every year for almost 2 decades. No current quarterback is on pace to approach this number. Even the regular season statistics, which might seem more attainable, are protected by longevity requirements. To match Brady's 89,000 passing yards, a quarterback would need to average over 4,000 yards per season for 22 consecutive seasons. They would need to avoid serious injuries, maintain elite play into their 40s, and never miss significant time. Given that most quarterbacks' careers end by their mid-30s, this combination of longevity and sustained excellence seems nearly impossible to replicate. The records also exist in the context of Brady's era. The NFL has become increasingly pass-friendly, with rule changes designed to protect quarterbacks and open up passing games. Future quarterbacks will likely throw for more yards per season than Brady did at his peak, but they're unlikely to combine those statistics with championship success, longevity, and playoff dominance. The combination of regular season excellence and postseason triumph is what makes Brady's record so formidable. Some young quarterbacks show promise of approaching Brady's statistical accomplishments. Patrick Mahomes has already won 3 Super Bowls by age 28 and displays the talent to win more. Josh Allen and Joe Burrow are perennial MVP candidates. But all of these players would need to maintain their current level of excellence for 15 more years while avoiding serious injuries and consistently winning championships. The odds are firmly against any of them matching Brady's complete resume. The statistical legacy serves multiple purposes beyond just record keeping. It provides objective evidence of Brady's greatness, removing subjectivity from debates about the greatest of all time. It demonstrates the sustainability of his excellence, showing that his success wasn't limited to a brief peak, but sustained across 2 decades. It validates the approach he took to training, preparation, and career management, and it sets a benchmark for future generations, a Mount Everest of achievement that challenges others to reach new heights. But perhaps most importantly, the statistical legacy reminds us that sustained excellence requires sustained commitment. Brady didn't accumulate these records through natural talent alone. He built them through 23 years of obsessive preparation, relentless work ethic, and absolute refusal to accept limitations. Every record represents hundreds of hours of film study, thousands of practice repetitions, countless sacrifices of personal comfort and convenience. The numbers are impressive, but the dedication they represent is even more so. The cultural impact, shaping an era of football and inspiring millions. Tom Brady's influence extended far beyond statistics and championships. He fundamentally shaped the culture of professional football and became a cultural icon whose impact transcended sports. For 2 decades, he was the face of the NFL, the player casual fans recognized, the quarterback every franchise wanted to emulate. His presence influenced how teams approached roster construction, how quarterbacks trained, how the position was valued, and how fans understood excellence. The Patriot way that Brady embodied became a model that franchises across the league attempted to replicate. The emphasis on team over individual, on next man up mentality when injuries occurred, on players sacrificing money for competitive advantage. These principles became gospel for many organizations. Some succeeded in implementing them, others failed because they lacked the quarterback and coach to make the philosophy work. But Brady's success proved that a system-based, ego-free approach could win consistently in the modern NFL. Brady also changed how teams valued and invested in the quarterback position. Before Brady, conventional wisdom held that quarterbacks needed elite physical tools, rocket arms, mobility, imposing size, to succeed at the highest level. Brady proved that intelligence, accuracy, and leadership could compensate for physical limitations. This shifted scouting priorities, making teams more willing to take chances on smart, accurate quarterbacks who lacked elite athleticism. Players like Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray and Mac Jones owe their opportunities in part to Brady's success despite physical limitations. The approach to quarterback longevity also changed dramatically because of Brady. Before his 40s dominance, teams assumed quarterbacks declined sharply after 35 and were finished by 40. Brady shattered this assumption, playing elite football at 43 and remaining competitive at 45. This changed how teams approached aging quarterbacks, making them more willing to retain veterans and less eager to draft replacements. It also influenced how quarterbacks trained, with many adopting Brady-inspired approaches to diet, flexibility work, and recovery. Brady's cultural impact extended beyond football strategy into popular culture. He became a household name, recognizable to people who never watched football. His marriage to supermodel Gisele Bündchen made him a fixture in celebrity magazines and gossip columns. His friendships with celebrities and business leaders, his appearances in commercials and movies, his social media presence, all of these elevated him beyond athlete into genuine celebrity. He transcended sports in a way few athletes ever do. The way Brady handled success also influenced public perception of athletes. He avoided major scandals, beyond the football-related Spygate and Deflategate controversies. He stayed married to the same woman for over a decade before their divorce. He maintained close relationships with his children and parents. He avoided the nightclub incidents, legal troubles, and personal drama that derailed other athletes' reputations. While not perfect, he could be demanding, intense, and sometimes difficult. He represented a relatively clean image of sustained success without implosion. Brady also became a symbol for various cultural movements and beliefs. For some, he represented the power of hard work and determination to overcome limitations. His sixth-round draft position made him an underdog story that resonated with anyone who had been overlooked or underestimated. For others, he represented old-guard excellence in an era of flashy young stars. His methodical, fundamental approach contrasted with the improvisational style of quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. He became a proxy for debates about respecting tradition versus embracing innovation. His political associations, particularly his friendship with Donald Trump, made him a polarizing figure outside of sports. Some fans celebrated his patriotism and support of conservative values. Others criticized his political connections and saw them as disappointing given his platform. Brady largely avoided explicit political statements, maintaining enough ambiguity to avoid completely alienating either side. But the mere existence of the controversy demonstrated his cultural relevance. People cared about his beliefs because he mattered beyond football. Brady's business ventures extended his influence into entrepreneurship. The TB12 brand, encompassing his training method, nutrition products, and lifestyle philosophy, became a successful business generating billions in revenue. His production company, 199 Productions, named after his draft position, created content and media projects. His ownership stake in the Las Vegas Raiders, acquired after retirement, kept him involved in football at the executive level. These ventures demonstrated that his influence would continue long after his playing career ended. Perhaps most importantly, Brady inspired millions of people, athletes and non-athletes alike, to to pursue excellence despite limitations. His story resonated because it wasn't about supernatural talent. It was about what a person could achieve through preparation, discipline, and absolute commitment to improvement. Young athletes watched him and believed they could succeed despite being overlooked. Business leaders studied his approach to competition and applied it to their industries. Parents pointed to him as an example of the power of hard work. The cultural impact also included his influence on the NFL's popularity. During Brady's prime, the NFL grew into a cultural juggernaut, dominating television ratings and becoming America's most popular sport. While attributing this entirely to Brady would be overstated. His consistent presence in championship games, his compelling underdog-to-champion narrative, and his sustained excellence created appointment television. Fans tuned in to see if he could win again, if he could be stopped, if this would finally be the year he declined. The drama he created was good for business. Brady's retirement marked the end of an era not just for his teams but for the NFL as a whole. He had been a constant presence for nearly a quarter-century. Entire generations of fans had never known professional football without Tom Brady. His departure left a void that wouldn't easily be filled, not just in terms of on-field excellence but in terms of cultural relevance and storytelling power. The league moved on, as it always does, but something was lost when Brady finally hung up his cleats. The cultural legacy is harder to quantify than statistics, but arguably more important. Brady changed how people thought about aging, about limitations, about the relationship between talent and hard work. He became a symbol that transcended football, representing different things to different people, but universally recognized as exceptional. His influence will be felt for generations in how young quarterbacks train, how teams build rosters, how athletes approach longevity, and how fans understand what's possible when talent meets obsession. What Tom Brady's bedtime story teaches us about building a dynasty in any field. The Tom Brady story is, ultimately, a universal narrative about building sustained excellence in any competitive field. While the specifics involve football, the principles apply to business, arts, sciences, or any domain where people strive for greatness. The lessons embedded in his journey from overlooked draft pick to greatest of all time provide a blueprint for achievement that transcends sports. The first lesson is about responding to rejection and setbacks. Brady was passed over by 31 teams and 198 other players in his draft. This rejection could have destroyed him psychologically. Instead, he transformed it into fuel, using the memory of being overlooked as constant motivation. In any field, rejection is inevitable. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't often comes down to how they process that rejection. Do they internalize it as evidence of their inadequacy? Or do they externalize it as motivation to prove doubters wrong? Brady chose the latter path. The second lesson concerns the relationship between preparation and execution. Brady's success wasn't the result of improvisation or natural brilliance emerging spontaneously. It was the product of obsessive preparation, making execution almost mechanical. He studied opponents until he could predict their tendencies. He practiced mechanics until they became automatic. He prepared for every possible scenario until nothing surprised him. This approach applies universally. Whether you're preparing for a business presentation, a musical performance, or a scientific experiment, Thorough preparation transforms uncertainty into confidence. The third lesson is about adapting to changed circumstances. Brady reinvented himself multiple times throughout his career. He went from game manager to elite passer to pocket surgeon. He adapted to rule changes, personnel changes, and coaching changes. When he moved to Tampa Bay, he learned an entirely new system at age 43. This adaptability prevented stagnation and extended his relevance. In rapidly changing fields, which describes most modern industries, the ability to adapt while maintaining core principles is essential for longevity. The fourth lesson involves the importance of culture and environment. Brady thrived in New England's demanding, ego-free system. He later transformed Tampa Bay's culture through his presence and leadership. The lesson is that individual talent, no matter how great, operates within systems that either amplify or diminish it. Building the right culture, one that values preparation, accountability, and team success over individual glory, creates conditions where excellence can flourish. Leaders in any organization must think carefully about the culture they're creating and whether it enables or inhibits greatness. The fifth lesson is about the role of complementary skills. Brady succeeded because he surrounded himself with elite defenses, intelligent coaching, and reliable teammates. He understood that his job was to execute his role excellently, not to do everything himself. This principle applies across fields, recognizing what you do well, finding others who excel in complementary areas, and trusting them to perform their roles. The lone genius model of achievement is mostly myth. Sustained excellence typically requires collaborative brilliance. The sixth lesson concerns obsession and work ethic. Brady's fanatical commitment to preparation, training, and improvement wasn't normal or balanced. It was extreme, bordering on unhealthy. But it was also necessary for reaching the absolute peak of his field. The lesson isn't that everyone should be as extreme as Brady. That's neither possible nor advisable for most people. Rather, it's understanding that reaching the very top of any competitive field requires sacrifices that separate the great from the merely good. You must honestly assess whether you're willing to make those sacrifices. The seventh lesson is about leadership through example. Brady led not primarily through speeches or charisma, but through his work ethic and performance in crucial moments. He set standards through his behavior, and others felt compelled to match them. This model of leadership, demanding excellence while demonstrating it personally, creates sustainable organizational performance. Whether you're leading a sports team, a business unit, or a creative project, leading by example establishes credibility that mere words cannot. The eighth lesson involves embracing pressure situations. Brady thrived when games were on the line, orchestrating 22 game-winning drives in the playoffs. He didn't shrink from pressure, he seemed energized by it. This mental approach can be developed through exposure and preparation. By preparing thoroughly for high-stakes situations and reframing anxiety as excitement, people can learn to perform better under pressure rather than worse. The most valuable contributors in any field are those who elevate their performance when it matters most. The ninth lesson is about longevity and sustainability. Brady's career lasted 23 years at an elite level, a remarkable achievement in a sport that destroys bodies. He accomplished this through intelligent maintenance, constant adaptation, and refusing to accept age-based limitations. In longer careers, whether in business, academia, or the arts, sustainability matters enormously. The ability to remain effective over decades compounds advantages and allows for achievements impossible in shorter timeframes. This requires attention to physical health, mental freshness, and continuous learning. The 10th and final lesson is about legacy and validation. Brady's move to Tampa Bay at 43 was fundamentally about proving his greatness was independent of specific circumstances. He risked his legacy to validate it more completely. This willingness to take risks for the sake of proving oneself, even after tremendous success, demonstrates a particular kind of competitive fire. For people who have achieved success in one context, the question becomes, can you succeed somewhere else? Are you willing to prove it? Sometimes the most meaningful achievements come from unnecessary risks taken purely for validation. Tom Brady's bedtime story isn't just about football, it's about what's possible when talent meets opportunity, meets obsession, meets adaptability, meets leadership. It's about how rejection can become fuel. It's about how preparation enables execution. It's about how culture amplifies individual ability. It's about how sustained excellence requires sustained commitment. It's about how legacy is built not through avoiding challenges but through confronting them. The dynasty Brady built, first in New England, then in Tampa Bay, followed principles that apply far beyond football. Any organization, any team, any individual pursuing greatness can learn from his approach. The specifics will differ. Your film study is market research. Your game plan is a business strategy. Your fourth quarter comeback is a crucial pitch or performance. But the underlying principles remain constant. Building a dynasty, whether personal or organizational, requires identifying and maximizing your advantages while compensating for your limitations. It requires finding the right systems and people to complement your abilities. It requires responding to setbacks with increased determination rather than resignation. It requires adapting to changing conditions while maintaining core principles. It requires leading through example and demanding excellence from yourself before demanding it from others. It requires preparing thoroughly so execution becomes automatic. And it requires sustaining commitment not for weeks or months but for years and decades. Tom Brady's story is compelling because it affirms that greatness isn't reserved for the genetically blessed or the supernaturally talented. It's available to anyone willing to do the work, make the sacrifices, and maintain the commitment. The 6th round pick became the greatest of all time not through advantages given at birth, but through advantages created through effort. That's the bedtime story every champion tells themselves. I am not limited by my starting point. I am only limited by my commitment to the process. As the lights go down and this bedtime story reaches its conclusion, the final message echoes. Dynasties aren't built on talent alone. They're built on the relentless pursuit of excellence, day after day, year after year, regardless of obstacles or distractions. They're built by people who refuse to accept limitations, who use rejection as fuel, who prepare obsessively, who adapt constantly, who lead by example, and who never stop believing they can achieve what others think impossible. Tom Brady's story is exceptional, but the principles that created it are universal. The question for each person is simply this: Are you willing to do what it takes? The answer to that question determines whether you merely admire dynasties built by others or build one yourself. The end.